What's up, athletes? I had a lot of fun doing the first book review, so I was really excited to do this one, despite the book not being super great. Star Wars A Crash of Fates is a very weird book. While Lost Stars is a love story in Star Wars, A Crash of Fates is a Star Wars love story, and it's honestly just kinda mid. This book came out in 2019, just before Rise of Skywalker came out, but unlike Lost Stars, it's not a tie-in to that movie. In fact, it has barely anything to do with the sequel trilogy at all, despite being set during or a little after The Last Jedi. The book starts with our two main characters, Izzy and Jules, climbing a mountain on Batuu, the planet that the Disneyland attraction is supposed to be set on. They're like 6 years old and they're just free climbing a mountain because both their parents work. After almost being eaten by a cat at the top, they talk about how they want to get their own ships and explore the galaxy. She wants to be a princess of the ship while he wants to be the captain. After they talk about their plans, they go home, and in the middle of the night, Izzy's parents drag her to the starport, and they leave the planet, and she never even got a chance to say goodbye to Jules. We then jump to 13 years later, where Izzy is a low-level smuggler working with a sketchy crew and has a douchebag of a boyfriend. They're all at this random bar getting ready for their next mission before they get attacked by this random group of bounty hunters. Who are these bounty hunters, what are they doing here, and why do they attack the cantina is never explained, and they're never mentioned again. This is also the only other battle in the book, and the only time anyone dies in the book is when Izzy shoots one of the bounty hunters. Yes, and this entire book, only one person dies, and the one person who dies is some inconsequential bounty hunter. During the battle, Izzy's boyfriend breaks up with her because the smuggler's crew doesn't want her on the mission, and they try to leave her behind. Why? I don't know, actually. It never really gets explained. We then cut to Jules, who's still living on Batuu as a farmer and courier for this one guy named Doc. Jules lives with his sister and her husband, and after giving his neighbor some green milk, sets off to find his land speeder he left in a field the other day because he decided to get drunk with his friends. He meets up with this 10-year-old named Tap, who has his own land speeder, and hitches a ride to where he left his land speeder, and then goes to Doc's workshop. Doc is some guy who sells exotic stuff, I think he's supposed to be running a semi-legit black market operation or something, but really he just has a bunch of fan service in his workshop, like a Zilla Beast head or a stuffed Wampa. Doc isn't in the shop, so Jules and Tap get set to doing some chores while they wait for him to come back. We then go back to Izzy, who's recruited by a Rhodian to deliver a package to Doc. The Rhodian used to work with her mom, who was a smuggler too, and he recognized her ship when she came to the planet. She accepts because she's desperate for a job, and after arriving at Batuu, she has the spaceport lady work on her ship for the rest of the book while she tries to find Doc's workshop. On her way there, she gets stopped by a stormtrooper who's doing stormtrooper things and wants to know what she's doing and what she's carrying. But then he gets called away by his bosses for some reason, and this never comes up again. This is also like the only time the First Order does anything in this book, despite the fact they occupy the planet and outpost. I will come back to this. Izzy finds the shop, and as she's knocking on the door frantically because she's scared the First Order might try to find her, she accidentally punches Jules in the nose when he opens the door. As she tries to apologize for what she did to him as Tap is laughing his head off, Jules and Izzy recognize each other, and it's awkward. Jules doesn't know what to say, and Izzy isn't sure she could say anything. But they're hungry because they skipped breakfast. Why did I say it like that? But they're hungry because they skipped breakfast, and since Doc is nowhere to be found, Izzy agrees to join him as they go to a restaurant. Jules is buff because he's got farmer strength, and Izzy can't stop looking at his burly, oily muscles, but then his land speeder breaks down and they have to push it to the spaceport so the lady there can fix it. Then they go to the restaurant, and while there, Izzy meets two of Jules' friends who are in a band. But she also sees her old crew and ex-boyfriend there conveniently and goes outside to calm herself. Her old boss saw her too and was waiting for her to leave because she knew she would leave, I guess. I don't know why she thought she would leave. And asks her what she's doing with Jules. Izzy tells her he's just some guy she met and she's not following them or anything. It's just a coincidence they're on the same planet. They agree to stay away from each other. She comes back in the restaurant and she tells Jules that her ex-boyfriend is here, and Jules is like, oh well, he made a huge mistake, and she asks him if he'd join her on her adventures. Jules says no because he realizes he'd be taking advantage of her if he had said yes because she's in an emotional state right now about seeing her ex on Batuu, and then they go back to Doc's. Things are kind of awkward right now, but Jules has a job to do that Doc asked him to do, so he goes off to do his job while Izzy waits for Doc. But then she realizes she has the wrong package because she has Jules and Jules has hers. So she rushes into the desert to find him, and Jules' two friends, whom she met earlier, just so happen to be going to the place that Jules is going to. Wow, ain't that lucky. Jules is taking his package to Hondo Onaka's shipping company, and in one of the most heinous sins an author can make, Hondo Onaka is not in the book at all. Jules is surprised to see Izzy there, but after she explains what happened, Jules tries to use his charm on Hondo's secretaries to get the package he accidentally gave them and trade for the bright one. But the secretary says no because it's in the office and nothing is allowed outside the office once it's in the office, and Hondo checks it off. So Izzy sneaks into the office instead and tries to get the package, but this one girl named Delta is taking the packages to ship them on some random ship, so Izzy stuns her and takes her package, and she and Jules runs away. This doesn't make any sense because we were just told that nothing's allowed to leave the office until Hondo checks it off. As they try to go back to Doc's workshop, they're stopped in the streets by a riot happening between Batuians and First Order sympathizers. So they take a detour and get stopped by thugs who work for the Jabba the Hutt knockoff Olga, who's some hentai monster or something. They go to her palace and she wants to know what Izzy is doing because Izzy's mom also used to work for her, and Izzy learns that her mom was actually some sort of bounty hunter that was really important to all sorts of crime bosses back in the day. Izzy is sad because she realized she never knew who her mother actually was. Olga then asks them to spy on Izzy's old boss because Olga wants to know why she's there too. Olga wants them to take this random barrel of bait or something to the pet shop owner on Black Spire Outpost. So Jules and Izzy do that, and the guy who owns the pet shop is also one of Jules' friends and was the guy he went drinking with yesterday. While they're at the pet shop, Delta comes into the pet shop for some reason and tries to kill Izzy, but Izzy lets all the pets go, and this one burb follows her because she freed him, that they end up naming Lucky. They go back to Doc's workshop, and he's still not back yet, and Jules realizes that there must have been some sort of fight or something that happened. It turns out Doc was locked in his safe by some attacker who never comes up again, and we never learn who he is. After Izzy gives Doc her package, he then tells Jules he needs to take it to this random spot in the desert to give it to the right people. Izzy wants to come with him because she feels it's her duty or something to see the job through until the end. So they go to the biggest farm on the planet while they wait for the right time, and Izzy gets to see how popular Jules is on Batuu. Like, he is the dude on the planet. Everyone loves him, everyone knows who he is. She meets with a lot of his friends who work on the farm, and even meets his sister, who is mad at her because she blames Izzy for the reason Jules never left Batuu. His sister tells her that Jules had several opportunities, including working for the New Republic Navy, but he never took any of those options because he always had a fleeting feeling he'd see Izzy again. After this conversation, Izzy confronts Jules on this and tries to wonder if this is in fact true or if he wanted to stay on Batuu for other reasons. Now, I actually really liked this part of the book because Jules thinks back on his past life, the past 13 years, and realizes that while, yes, he had been staying on Batuu because he hoped one day Izzy would come back, he actually had a pretty good life on the planet, even though it was kind of boring. He's made lasting friendships with people here and has become kind of a local legend for how kind and charitable and caring a person he is. He is incredibly selfless, which the book does a pretty good job of explaining, and while he's always longed to have a more exciting life, he's happy that even though he spent his whole life being a massive simp, it was worth it thus far. But then it's ruined because they kiss each other and start falling in love with each other despite only knowing each other for a day. Yeah, this entire book, bar the prologue and epilogue, takes place in one day, and if we want to get really technical, probably takes place in the span of 7 hours since the book is about an 8-hour listen. So if we're being charitable, they fall in love with each other in about 6 hours. Now, to be fair, she's always kind of regretted not getting to say goodbye, and she's always dreamt of a guy exactly like Jules, even when she was with her ex. And I have skipped over this in the review, but there's constant references... Why can't I speak? Fuck! There's constant references to them looking at each other's lips or staring into each other for a moment too long, and they do spend a ton of time just talking to each other, so there's at least a small attempt at building a relationship. And again, to be fair, they don't confess their love to each other until a little later, about 6 hours into the book, so I'll give it a pass, even though it's weird that this happens in only a few hours. Anyway, after their kiss, they go deliver the package to the people they have to, and it turns out they're giving it to the Resistance. This is the only time the Resistance appears in the book at all, and we don't even learn what it is they gave them. They decide to celebrate and go swimming, where they make out in the water on the shore, before Jules gets kidnapped by Izzy's ex. I forgot to mention this, but after they found Doc and set off to leave for the farm, they ran into her ex who was going to Doc's shop for some reason, and he tried to recruit Izzy and Jules into the crew because they needed more people or something. But he's here now, at the swimming hole, and takes Jules hostage after he makes out with Izzy for a while. Izzy is busy swimming because she's ecstatic about making out with Jules, so her ex waits for her as Delta keeps Jules tied up. They apparently recruited Delta at some point, so I don't know why they tried to recruit Jules and Izzy too, but they ended up recruiting Delta. Her ex handcuffs her and takes her to where Delta and Jules are, and explains that they need Jules because he knows the layout of the farm, and explains that his crew is planning on destroying the farm because it's the most important farm on the planet. Why? I don't know. I think it's just to give Olga the middle finger or something. They want Jules to help them because he works on that farm, and they use Izzy and his sister as hostages to get their way. Her ex takes Jules in his land speeder while Izzy rides with Delta, but after Jules' speeder breaks down, Delta keeps going to the rendezvous point. But Izzy is able to convince Delta that if she helps these people, they'll just kill her or cut her out of the deal like they did with her. And this is enough to convince Delta, who's been trying to kill Izzy this whole time, to not go through with the plan, and instead takes Izzy to Hondo's base to get some people to help defend the farm. At the farm, Jules is tortured by the crew and forced to help load the grain the farm produces onto their ship, while Izzy's ex gloats to Jules and does not work. Jules is able to sow seeds of doubt in the rest of the crew, while Izzy rallies a squad to protect the farm and rescue Jules and his sister. They arrive in a ship, and the only major battle in the entire book happens here, where no one actually dies. Izzy goes face to face with her old boss, while Jules fights her ex, and Tap and Delta rescue Jules' sister. The pet shop owner is former military, so he goes and starts disarming the bombs that have been planted, while Olga sends a security team to try to help protect the farm. I don't remember what they said to get Olga's attention and why Olga's sending soldiers, but she's doing that, and I don't remember why that's the case. I don't think the book explained it. They arrive after the fighting ends and the bombs have been defused and the farm is saved and all the bad guys get hauled off to jail. Jules is trying to find Izzy, but Izzy is heartbroken now because she has made a promise to Izzy's sister that she would leave as soon as the job was done, and she feels guilty about Jules and his sister almost dying on her part, so she takes a speeder bike and goes back to the hangar. Jules is sad to see she's left and stares off into the sunset, sad but happy to spend a day with the one he loved. Izzy gets back to her ship, but finds a recording of her mother that was in a closet for some reason. And while we don't know what it says, she listens to it multiple times and decides to stay on Batuu. Jules, on the other hand, is at the cantina and is being praised by literally everyone on the planet for helping save the most important farm, with everyone going out of their way to buy him drinks. Olga and Doc are even toasting him. Many people are sad that Izzy isn't around to party too because they want to congratulate her on her efforts to save the farm, but then this one Gran says that she's still here because he literally got to the party like 5 minutes ago and her ship is still at the spaceport. And then Izzy comes into the cantina and she and Jules kiss and dance long into the night, and they become a couple as if anyone was surprised that would happen, and then they become smugglers for Hondo after she teaches him to fly. Then, at the end of the book, after like a month or so, the Resistance launch an invasion on Batuu. Somehow, I'm not sure where they have the manpower to do this. And Izzy and Jules smile at each other and go to their ships to join the fight for a potential sequel that will probably never come. Now, I have to be honest, this isn't that bad a book. It's not really a Star Wars book, because other than the occasional mention of aliens, the First Order and the Resistance have no part in the story at all, and taking them out changes pretty much nothing. The Force is mentioned like twice, but that's it, and honestly, there's just not a whole lot of Star Wars-y stuff happening in it. This is just a Hallmark love story, but with a Star Wars skin. It's well written for the most part, I guess, but it's clear that the target audience for this book is teenage girls. Like Lost Stars, while it is a love story, appeals to both guy and girl teenagers, this book, while I enjoyed it for what it was, really isn't all that exciting for your average dude. I mean, Jules isn't even really the main character, Izzy is. He's just the love interest, and they took the trope of the caring and sweet damsel and made it a dude who instead of being rescued by the hot and charming man, is instead rescued by the pretty and shy girl. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You bet your ass I was bricked up when they went swimming. But there's really not a whole lot here. Like I said, other than the occasional mention of an alien species or a stormtrooper or the Force, there's nothing that makes this any different than any other romantic novel you can read. Unless you listen to the audiobook. In typical Star Wars audiobook fashion, this book uses sound effects and music. It also weirdly uses the Doom door sound effect for when engines of the land speeder shut down, which is really weird. Like, could id Software sue Disney for that? Or did Disney buy the rights to use the sound effect for the book? It's weird once you hear it, and it made me laugh every time I heard it. There's also a ton of music composed for this book. There's this weird dubstep track they use for this robot DJ who has a radio station that they listen to while driving the land speeder. There's some classical romantical music for the romance parts. And there's this surprisingly badass track they use when Izzy flies the transport ship to the farm. The reader does a fantastic job conveying the characters, and when they do use the John Williams music or blaster sound effects, it's used properly. As an audiobook, this is honestly a pretty fun listen. As a book itself, it's kind of lackluster and dull. You've read, watched, or listened to this story a million times before, but what makes it unique is the Star Wars elements that get sprinkled in, but you can really only appreciate that if you listen to it as an audiobook. Jules and Izzy are decent characters. Jules is oddly really relatable to me. I don't know why, but I felt myself relate to his actions a lot. Izzy is also kind of a fun character. I'm not really big on her love for Jules, but it works, I guess. Supporting characters are lacking, if not existent. I couldn't tell you one thing they do other than Tap, who's 10 and annoying. But as for our main guy and girl, you could do worse. Would I recommend this book? I don't know. It's not amazing. It's not horrible. If you have a long work shift, I would say listen to the audiobook. But other than that, I guess it's not a bad book to read to your kid a couple of nights before bed. But other than that, there's really not much of a reason to pick it up.